No, there will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
We have no choice. We have no choice.
To build back better or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it build back better.
Build that wall. Build that wall.
Building back better.
Build that wall.
To do things
Build that wall. To build that wall. Build that wall.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
My plan to build back better.
Start taking all the problems that have been created in education and mental health and start to build back in a positive way.
I have launched a booklet called Build Back Better, written after coronavirus.
It's about building this country back better.
Growing conspiracy following it. It is called the Great Reset.
An unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset the ways in which we live.
The great opportunity for reset.
The theory even calls Mr. Biden's campaign slogan, Build Back Better, a front for the conspiracy.
Build back better.
Building back better our economy.
Build back better.
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
It's a big effort to, some would say, to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
Build that
conspiracy.
Wall.
Conspiracy.
Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
No, there will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
He walked out in the gray light and stood, and he saw for a brief moment the absolute truth of the world. The cold, relentless circling of the intestate earth. Darkness implacable. The blind dogs of the sun in their running. The crushing black vacuum of the universe. And somewhere 200 animals trembling like ground foxes in their cover. Borrowed time and borrowed world and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it.
And lo, for the earth was empty of form, and void, and darkness was all over the face of the deep, and we said, look at that fucker dance.
Welcome to the heat death of the universe for today, April 9th. It is 12:11. What's with us always starting at 11 past the hour?
I don't know. We've been smart. We could have started at 11:11.
Yeah, but we didn't.
I think we started recording around 11:11.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at... Okay, whatever. So I cut myself off before I went down a long some sort of tangent. Yeah, it's 12:11 p.m. Korea Standard Time because we are in Seoul, South Korea. Just to remind everybody. I don't know why. I guess we're the only podcast of this sort in Seoul, as far as I can tell.
As far as I know.
What if we have some like really heavy competition we just don't know about? We'll have to.
I mean,
become friends with them, not kill them. Become friends with them.
I don't really know, but Jordan's friends with the guys who run the FC Soccer podcast that talks about all the soccer stuff going on in the Korean community.
Hey, that's our thing. They're edging it on our territory.
We should get on that show. Make it come on our show.
Say all the stuff we know about soccer.
It would not take me very long to say all the stuff I know about soccer.
I'll do it, but I will not use the word soccer. I will only say foosball.
Football. Total football.
I want to say it in German just to be annoying, even more annoying. Okay, it's a plan. Before we really get going, I feel like we have to mention something and maybe even get a chant going.
Get a chant going?
Build that wall. Build that wall.
Build that wall.
It's so funny how quickly that chant is now being taken up by the hashtag resistance, it seems like. Or at the very least, not being attacked or commented on. I mean, I've been way out of the Twitter loop these days. Like, I can't bring myself to...
No, it's a galaxy brain move by Biden.
Yeah.
Like, listen, right now he's getting a lot of negative coverage because he's also letting childs be in cages. But if there's a wall, no more children are getting into the country. No one's getting into the country, which means no more children in cages.
12th dimensional chess.
And he's like pleasing the base of supporters who don't really like him. And they're not going to like him if he builds the wall. They'll fucking hate the wall. Maybe this is really just like, they know they're pissing off people right now. But if they really start to just lean into these policies that no one wanted, maybe when the Republicans get elected next time, because everyone's disillusioned by the fact that the Dems had the House and Senate and did nothing.
Except continue all this bad shit, but yeah.
The Republicans will come in and be like, we fucking hated all that shit. We didn't want a wall like this. Let's tear this one down so we can build a different one.
Yeah.
A better wall.
History is meaningless, and no matter how fresh it is in the rear view. Yeah, maybe you're right. Except, I mean, it's definitely not Biden playing 12th dimensional chess, obviously. I mean, he can't handle being spoken to by more than one person at a time, if that. But no, I just think this is the funniest, I think, continuation of Trump's policies, just blatant. Like, I mean, look, I mean, every time this shit happens, I'm gonna point it out with a little bit of "I told you so" in my voice. You know, I'm not gonna fucking gloat about it. I'm not happy about it, but it's like, to all the fucking people that told us lesser of two evils, again, please tell me how this is different. And I'm sure there's already people running, coverage and defense for him and like trying to spin it. And well, he's just filling in the gaps in the wall that Trump left. Like, I don't know. I can't even imagine what the defense is, to be honest. And, this isn't a major part of our episode today, so I didn't really do a lot of research. But yeah, I mean, Biden is going to continue building the fucking wall, which
exactly
that was like that was the most. I can't think of a more memorable like policy
from Trump
that had full consensus of the whole right, like not even just the alt-right, like I think even
just all of them.
Yeah, even never Trumper people on the right were like, build the wall. And here's the other kicker. I probably brought this up at some point when criticizing Biden, but there's public footage of Biden talking to like some group of people on the campaign trail. And this was before the last campaign. This was when he was still lucid, I think. And like, his brain wasn't leaking out of his ears or whatever. And he just said, he didn't use the word wall, but he said fence. He's like, trying to reassure all these terrified reactionary old people. He's like, well, what we need to do is build a goddamn fence down there, goddamn it. And like, you know, of course that footage leaked like during the campaign last year, and like nobody cared. You know, it was just, well, a fence is not as bad as a wall. It was I'm guessing was part of the discourse there. But yeah, it's just, I can't even really get pissed off about it. It's just beyond parody. It's just really funny. I think like you and I might have even joked about something like this like happening before the election actually happened. Like, you know,
I mean, what were they going to do? Tear down what they had already built?
Well, I mean, okay, then here's the other thing. Biden literally said in interviews, maybe right before he was sworn in, but after he had won the election, he said, I'm not going to add a single inch to that damn thing. It all stops right now. Like, and yeah, here we are. So, and it's not even like the wall is the most pressing issue of our time or anything, but it's just like, it seems symbolically significant to me of like how little anything is going to change, and already how little anything has changed from, I mean, it's just extensions of what Trump was already doing.
Other than a national mood, not much changed under Trump.
No, yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, and like a lot of stuff Trump did was really an extension of what Obama was doing. Like,
which
maybe
was
this will help.
Of what Bush was doing, which was an extension of what
Clinton was doing.
Which
was
also
an extension of Reagan.
Of what Bush was doing. But there's more truth to that than, or actually, there's a lot of truth to that. That it's all just like, nothing has changed that much. But some things have changed. I mean, like, I don't know how much of it's government change. This is like just a little aside, but things have changed. Like, look at like I always go to like gay rights, but those are a lot better now for the most part. Also acceptance. I think like acceptance of sexualities and stuff has gotten a lot better, but I don't know if that's more of like a media and cultural change or like a government change.
It's not a government change. That's the government actually reacting to a like the culmination of like 50 years of activism where people like, you know, bled in the streets for that kind of stuff. That's why I hate when people give Obama so much credit for like legalizing gay marriage. Considering his opinion on that was the total opposite. Like,
yeah, wasn't he against it at first?
Completely.
I thought so was oddly Biden. That Biden was the one who was for it.
No, that's also not true though. Like, people like to say Biden was very like sort of ahead of his time with gay rights. Like, he was just reacting to the changing winds as much as Hillary was, as much as Obama was. Like, their whole thing was, their big like bold stance was we're for civil unions but not for marriage, and like they couldn't give, you know, and why? It's like, why? What's the difference, you know? But
I mean, for a long time I was the guy that was just against marriage altogether as a institution. Just get rid of it.
You and every other hack stand-up comedian.
Yeah,
that was like the go-to joke in stand-up comedy for such a long time. Was like, why are they fighting so hard for marriage? Marriage sucks.
Well, yeah, no, I
keep having fun out there with all your gay friends in the nightclubs.
No, I meant like more of like legally. Why should this religious thing be illegal? It doesn't matter. I don't fucking care what people do.
Yeah.
I want people to be happy.
Outrageous.
As long as their happiness doesn't include stepping on other people's dreams, I want them to be happy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's like
that's my politic.
Voltaire. So you're a Voltairist? That sounds very close to terrorist.
I like to think of myself more as a Voltron. I'm made of many parts.
A Voltronian. Okay.
I like to think that I have the 5 lion spirits composing my being. There's a red one, a yellow one, a blue one.
I mean, I think... Okay, keep going about
I was just going to say, with their powers combined, I feel like I can bring happiness to a lot of people.
Yeah, you should do that. I mean, I think a lot of people would say that their conception of a freedom and a freedom in a free society is like, do whatever you want as long as it doesn't infringe on other people's right to do what they want. I mean, that's the libertarian hard line, and like, I mean, of course, I agree. Like, but then you actually have to start talking about the details of what that really means, because there are a lot of weird complications that can come up there. And
like buying stuff and not knowing where it was made, and realizing that you bought a pair of shoes that was made by child labor in Southeast Asia, and then realizing that you were infringing on people's rights to do what they want to.
Yeah, 100%, stuff like that. And yeah, exactly. I mean, because like libertarians always say like the same conception of liberty, but then they want like a completely unregulated, just Wild West, free market that they think magically regulates itself to like conform to human morality.
It doesn't.
And it doesn't. So anyway, I just wanted to I felt like also we haven't really brought up really topical shit in a while, so I just wanted to throw the wall thing in there at the top of the episode here. But I guess that's all I wanted to say about it for now. I'll be back for you later, Biden, with a real vendetta. Anyway, today we've got like a 2-part agenda, I guess. In a big way, I guess maybe a 1-part agenda. Like, this is going to be our Steve Bannon episode, but there's some recent
there's some news about Daniel Hale.
Yeah, news about Daniel Hale came out last week, which we're kind of a little late to getting to for some reason. I guess a week isn't too bad, but we did an episode, a whole big long episode about Daniel Hale, the whistleblower. I guess to quickly summarize what his story was for anyone who maybe didn't listen to or deeply remember what we talked about 40 episodes ago.
If you're not listening to our episodes 3 or 4 times, you're not fitting together the full puzzle. Remember, they're all leading to something bigger than you think.
Yes, this is like this is like the MCU.
It may not seem like it, but trust me, there's more to it than meets the eye.
This is the heat death of the universe, cinematic universe. That's a good acronym to put together. Well, why don't you explain, Jason? Like, what's the deal with Daniel Hale? What did he do?
The deal with Daniel is he worked for the NSA for a bit, then moved to a security contractor, and he was working in drone programs and realized that he became really uncomfortable with how many innocent people were probably being killed by drones in the drone strikes, and how the government was really kind of cagey about ever saying innocent people were killed by drones. They would always be like, no, it was always enemy combatants, but obviously that's not true. So when he got access to the papers, and after working within the military complex for a while, he decided to go public by talking to a writer at The Intercept, and he released all the Obama drone papers showing that the drones were killing innocent civilians and that war crimes were being committed, which somehow the G-Man found out that he had leaked the papers to The Intercept, and he was arrested, and I think he got like 13 charges on the Espionage Act, and he had been fighting it in court ever since. And it's just absolute like horseshit, because like he did a public good by releasing this information that our government's literally committing war crimes. But much like many other whistleblowers, he's being fucked for trying to do such a service for us by, I guess, being slandered as a spy, because espionage is spy. He's not a fucking spy. If anything, he's a hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my abridged take on it. Did I miss anything? Maybe I missed stuff. I mean, he's from my hometown. We did martial arts together briefly.
Yeah, you personally know Daniel, which is interesting. Gives us I don't know. I mean, I know you guys weren't like best friends or anything.
No, but
right?
we had
like,
a lot of the same friends.
Just like knowing someone personally and then seeing this stuff happen to them, it puts more of like a weight on it, I guess. Like they're less of an abstraction to you.
Yeah, no, I mean,
than they might be to other people.
I liked him. I thought Daniel was a cool guy. I don't think he deserves any of this.
Yeah, definitely not. So like, now the last time we talked about him, I think we were under the impression, and maybe wrongly, that he was being detained. And I think maybe he was at the time. And that's what I can't quite figure out. And of course, there's very little coverage of this new development. Like, all I've found about it so far is an article on the World Socialist website, which is not a mainstream publication in any real sense, although I think they do good reporting there. And on commondreams.org, which I also tend to like, but they're considered not fringe, but they're not
Common Dreams. Sometimes
they're not the
oh, I was gonna say,
well, I'm just saying that the Washington Times or Washington Post and New York Times and etc., and even like, I don't know, even like Vox or whatever, like nobody's touching this. And I mean, the story's a week old, so I can only imagine they're not going to touch it. And what really, just realizing now, annoys me is that the Intercept.
I was about to say that the Intercept's not talking about it. Though, how did the
I mean, a lot of this, I don't know enough about it to really get into it, but like, I have a feeling the Intercept's integrity has taken kind of a slip in recent times, but that's I guess for another day. But
isn't there some like internet conspiracy? Maybe it's not even conspiracy. The Intercept has a bad thing of throwing their whistleblowers under the bus.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who've leaked information to the Intercept end up getting caught. And I mean, the way that he was caught was, I mean, Daniel Hale and Jeremy Scahill, the reporter at the Intercept that he was in contact with, they were both not terribly careful. I mean, they were using like an encrypted messaging app, but I mean, that shit can be cracked very easily by the NSA or whoever. But that's essentially that's the story, at least.
Yeah, I think they were using
how he was found out.
Maybe they were using Telegram. I can't remember which one they were using. I know they were sending messages over Tor, but it depends on like what other stuff they were doing.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing I feel like about Daniel Hale is that he's almost not, I'm sure he's obviously, I mean, I'm sure he certainly doesn't want to go to jail, but I think he's also not afraid in a way to like, to stand up for his actions, even if that means being hugely unfairly punished. Because finding out, at least the way I found out recently, that he's not in custody at the moment, it was kind of surprising to me, because if I were him, I mean, and I say this as like it's way easier said than done, but I mean, I would have tried to make a run for it, or to, get asylum in another country. But obviously, I'm sure he had a lot of eyes on him.
Could have also been out of his means.
If he wasn't in jail.
Like, I don't think.
Also out of means, and I
don't think he had the
but
resources that, say, a Snowden or Assange had.
Yeah, and I mean, even those guys had a pretty difficult time getting asylum. I don't know about Assange exactly, and we're going to probably do like a big, longer episode about Assange later, but I know Snowden, he tried to get asylum in like 40-something countries, I think, before he finally got asylum in Russia. And to bring it back a little bit, Joe Biden, vice president at the time, was the one using all of his diplomatic ties, all his foreign policy experience, etc., to like go around threatening countries that might possibly grant Snowden asylum and saying, like, essentially, if you do this, we're going to cut off your fucking funding. Yep. And that's why a lot of people were denying him entry. So that brings us to like, I mean, one of the little things I saw about on YouTube about this story, that for a moment there was like a little hope that Biden might like pardon Daniel Hale, and that hope, even though that was a small amount of hope, that small amount of hope was like stomped out pretty quickly because of the Biden administration's reaction to Julian Assange. And how they didn't drop the attempt to try to, I can't think of the right word, extract him. What's the word I'm thinking of? God,
extradite? Not extradite.
When another country sends someone to be prosecuted, extradition. Extradite, not extract, extradite. And yeah, the Biden administration is still like chomping at the bit to prosecute Assange and to get him back onto American soil so they can just like fucking finish him off, like he's already suffering so much. But like I said, we should probably save
both
Assange
parties
stuff for another
hate
day, but
anyone who wants to smear the image of the U.S. government, and the Espionage Act gives them the ability to bring the hammer down on anyone who decides to say anything that dissents against what they want you to know.
Yeah, it's so broadly, the terms of the Espionage Act are so broad, and it's funny because you hear stuff like, in North Korea, do you know that you can go to jail if you even like criticize Kim Jong-un's haircut? And it's like, it's basically the same thing in America, like on the books. Like the Espionage Act essentially means like making any statements that can be construed as like opposing the United States government, basically.
Here's the fun thing.
Yeah, it doesn't.
We have people on the right complaining that Twitter takes away your free speech because they ban someone like Donald Trump, when the government literally is taking away people's like free speech when they release damning evidence that governments are doing fucked up shit. I don't know how you're near enough people complaining about this Bush era. I think the Espionage Act, it's way before the Bush era, but I think it started to be used a lot during like Bush Jr.'s term for terrorism reasons. It's became like really popular since then.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of whistleblowers went to jail under Obama as well. I mean, Obama declined to prosecute Daniel Hale for whatever reason, and then he was arrested under the Trump administration. And anyway, we should get to the specific developments.
We should save the Espionage Act and whistleblowing for later. Anyways, I'm sad.
Yeah, but we never said what happened to Daniel Hale.
He pled guilty.
Right. But
he pled.
The reason why I think is important. I also want just to mention like what he was doing like for work recently. which was that he got a job as a dishwasher at a restaurant in Washington, D.C., and he was fired recently from that job because he was trying to like unionize the kitchen staff there, which I thought was just kind of interesting, is seeing how like what he's doing with his time while he's awaiting this like it was I think he had 10, I think there were, now I'm not remember the numbers correctly. He either had 10 charges against him that he carry 5 years apiece, or 5 charges that carry possibly 10 years apiece. I can't remember what. So like when we talked about him last time, we were saying he's facing 50 years in jail, which could like presumably be the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And but it looked like if there's any silver lining to this whole fucked up mess, it appears now that he's pled guilty, like because he's not trying to fight it, I guess.
He's not allowed to fight it. That's part of the problem. They're not allowed.
Exactly. But there's according to the World Socialist website article, it says he's not expected to get more than 10 years of prison time, which is still outrageous,
so much.
But like
I can't imagine.
It sort of made me breathe a sigh of relief in a way, as horribly unjust as it is. Like 10 years is no 50 years is all I'm saying. So, I mean, and also there's also no guarantee of that. I mean, it's just saying expected to be punished with no more than 10 years in jail. So he's going to be sentenced in July. So I guess we'll have another update for you guys by then. But, for y'all by then, I don't want to gender the audience. But yeah, I guess those are just the two kind of, in my mind, they were the two updates. Like it gave us some insight into what he's been doing with his time while he's been, I guess, not detained. And, it gives it a glimpse into like his attitude about the whole thing as well, where he's like, he's not just like, and maybe, you know, he's not just hiding out or like trying to flee the country. Like he's willing to face this unjust court head on. And in the meantime, he's still like seeking out like, you know, real justice, in this case, like labor justice, which I found like really commendable. So, salute there to Daniel Hale. And yeah, I guess quick, like, to explain why can't he really fight it in court? Can you explain that?
Because it's being charged on the Espionage Act, I think that he can't like get a public trial, right? Right. The reason that he's pleading guilty is because the Espionage Act charges prevent a public interest defense. So he can't like defend himself by saying that releasing this information was in the public good. So like, and I mean, technically he broke the law. Like, whether or not it's a just law, I mean, it's obviously not a just law. He did. And like his only like real defense would be that it was in the public's interest, which it was. And you can't do that under the Espionage Act.
Yeah, like by definition, the Espionage Act doesn't allow you to give the public interest defense. I'll just read this paragraph here from the World Socialist website article. And it says, the reason Hale cited for pleading guilty is because Espionage Act charges prevent a public interest defense. In other words, Hale's lawyers were barred from arguing that the need of the public to be made aware of the criminal activities of the U.S. government was more important than his obligation not to disclose classified information to anyone. With the trial set to begin next week, Hale was forced to plead guilty in order to avoid potentially spending decades in federal prison. So yeah, they're just like hanging over this like huge sentence over his head. Although 4 of the 5 counts still remain against him, so I guess they dropped one, and that answers my my question or whatever about I couldn't remember how many charges for how many years. It was 5 charges at 10 years apiece. He is scheduled for sentencing on July 13th and expected to be punished with no more than 10 years in jail. The Assistant Attorney General said, basically, well, Daniel Hale has admitted to committing crimes, knowing all along what he was doing was against the law. And what he did was print some documents and give them to a journalist. This part here is good. Of course, Assistant Attorney General made no reference to the information that Hale brought to light or the fact that his exposures revealed activities carried out by the Obama, Trump, and now Biden administrations that are known by everyone in the world for being against the law in the U.S. and internationally. So yeah, it's just this idea of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Technocratic's not the right word, but it's just this kind of like, doesn't matter. Like, the details don't matter. A law was broken, and now we're going to like basically take away your constitutional rights to any sort of fair trial whatsoever.
I think
by putting all these like stringent restrictions on how you can even defend yourself in court.
Yeah, I think his lawyer summed it up perfectly.
So I guess, man, the trial's starting. I mean, I guess the trial's starting now because this article is from a week ago. So I'm sure we'll probably have maybe a few more, updates to this whole thing. Well, hopefully. I mean, seeing how little the press actually covers this stuff is ridiculous. But it looks like a couple good outfits, like the WSWS and Common Dreams at least are covering it. And I guess then you have to go to like even more fringe sources, like, just like YouTubers or whatever. But anyway,
us. We're a fringe source.
I guess.
Nothing. I said we're a fringe source.
Oh, fringe. I misheard. It was like French source. French source.
We're also
we
a
are French source.
Bonjour.
French Fringe Podcast. We're going to change our name soon to that. Terrible name. The French Fringe Source Podcast. So we planned on doing this about talking about Steve Bannon. I was trying to remember why this even came up as an idea for an episode, and I can't fucking remember at all.
I thought it was just because you watched the movie.
Yeah, but I don't know why I watched the movie.
Oh, I really thought it was just because you watched the movie.
Yeah, but there's something reminded me to, like, I don't normally think about Steve Bannon. I've never really had any real thoughts about Steve Bannon. And I know this is very exciting to the listeners. I think I remember what it was now. I was just like surfing through like a documentary site, and there was a short documentary on Steve Bannon. And I thought, hey, that could be interesting. I don't really know that much about the man, Steve Bannon, which led me into watching, the famous documentarian Errol Morris. He made a documentary in, I think, 2018, called American Dharma, which is just him and Steve Bannon sitting down and chatting.
Before we get into that, let me ask you some important questions. Let's define our terms. First off, what's American?
An adjective relating to America, which is like a continent.
That's a good answer.
Discovered by
Christopher Columbus.
By Leif Erikson.
Why haven't I heard of him? I thought it was Christopher Columbus.
I mean, there's definitely Vikings or something that came to North America first, but I mean, Christopher Columbus, sure, that's like the coloring book version of
that guy sucks.
How
Christopher Columbus,
Europe found America.
I bet the Viking also sucks, but I know that Christopher Columbus sucks. My next term, what is Dharma?
Dharma is a Buddhist term, and according to Steve Bannon, and he uses the word a few times, this cements the idea to me that Steve Bannon is a real bag of hot air who just likes to listen to himself talk. He did not need to use the word Dharma. He's not a Buddhist. He's just trying to sound smart. And he defines Dharma as duty, fate, destiny. I don't know what the difference between fate and destiny is either, to be honest. But it sounds better if you say something in threes, I guess. It makes him sound more profound.
It's one number off from death.
But yeah, I guess you can just substitute it as duty, like following your your fated duty as well. So,
and how does America and Dharma relate to Stephen Bannon?
Well, Steve Bannon basically likes to think of himself as this brave general who has to make the tough decisions because that's his duty. So if people see him as a villain, well, then so be it, because that's his dharma, is to make the hard calls and do whatever it takes to save the greatest country on earth or whatever. I mean, we're a little bit getting ahead of ourselves here, but I mean, I guess breaking down the title is not a bad place to start. So one of the conceits throughout the documentary, at least, is and I should say first, Errol Morris is generally a documentary filmmaker that I like. I've seen a number of his documentaries. There's another one of his from before this where he did the same style of documentary, where he just had a one-on-one interview with Donald Rumsfeld, which I'm curious to see. I haven't seen it yet, but so this one though was, I guess, a little controversial because some people felt like he didn't take Bannon to task enough, even though he just, at certain points in the documentary that we see, I mean, I'm sure it might have even gotten worse in all the stuff that hit the cutting room floor, but he just calls Bannon a tyrant and a Nazi and a dangerous person, right to his face. But and some people didn't get their bloodlust satisfied enough by the documentary, I guess.
A lot of people really hated Donald Trump. And Bannon being an extension of Donald Trump.
You don't say.
And I could see how they would dislike this movie, because there are times gasped that they might have made Bannon and even Trump in ways seem smart.
I don't think the documentary does that, though. I mean, I've just watched it for a second time. Whenever Bannon says something like about how Trump is a genius or Trump does this or that, it's while he's saying it, Errol Morris is just putting up a highlight reel of clips from newspapers and magazine articles, all saying the opposite point of what Steve Bannon's trying to say. So I think some of these people just were reacting to the surface level. And yeah, they felt just it's I mean, what did you expect Errol Morris to do? Just fucking
lecture, sit down, don't do a documentary, just sit down with Bannon and lecture him about all the bad stuff he's doing, like a parent,
he's trying to get Bannon to be candid and more honest about his real politics.
That's the point of,
which he does get some of that out of him. I mean, I have a few criticisms of Errol Morris too in the way the documentary was presented, but they're not the same. They're not that I felt like he was being too chummy with Bannon. Anyway, that's a real side point. But I mean, maybe we should just give a rundown. I mean, most people know at least who Steve Bannon is in the context of since 2016. I mean, I never heard of the guy before 2016.
I think I did.
Really? For what? Do you remember what?
Because of World of Warcraft.
Oh, the gold
IG
mining
stuff.
thing. Okay.
I'm pretty sure I knew about that way before Trump.
Did he have the same kind of reputation then that he does now?
No, I mean, he was just a Goldman Sachs investor and film producer.
Right. So yeah, I mean, we're not doing like this Steve Bannon, this is your life,
He was an officer in the Navy.
He was in the Navy for, I believe, 7 years.
He went to one of those nice schools, Harvard.
I should mention that his military experience, because I think this is an important part of his personality, is he really talks a lot in like warfare terms, and like he really compares himself to these kind of like cinematic, like tough guys and generals and things like that. But his time in the Navy was like, he was just floating on a boat, like really. Like this was the late 70s and early 80s is when he was in the Navy.
The Cold War.
And yeah, exactly. So there was didn't see any action, is my
People
point.
were fighting the cold.
Yeah, that's what that
You
was
haven't
about.
heard the legends of the Cold War? There were the Yetis and the giant snowmen with ice beams. It's lucky that America and Russia teamed up to fight off the evil forces of the cold.
Ah, now I get it. But I think Steve Bannon's ship was like frozen in the like down in Antarctica or something. Then.
He was like in the he was in the fleet that was like in this they were just sailing around like the Mediterranean, like the warmer parts of the sea. He never fought any cold monsters. He didn't have to lose a leg to frostbite.
What a poser. I mean, I guess we could just kind of like run through what we saw in this documentary, because it does cover like a lot of the major highlights of his career, like a little bit pre and then mostly like during and post his time with Trump.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first thing we see in the documentary is Errol Morris had built the set of this old war movie that I've never seen called 12 O'Clock High.
I've never seen it either.
And I guess
actually, oddly, the American Dharma movie that made me want to see it, just because whenever I see like movies used in documentaries, I'm like, I better go watch that so I get the reference next time.
Yeah, it looks kind of interesting. Although I feel like just from the description, I kind of get what it's about enough. But so I guess they kind of present Steve Bannon as like a cinephile, but then they go through like the movies that he finds particularly inspiring or whatever, and they usually involve these tough characters that don't go for like touchy-feely bullshit. They don't let their emotions dictate what they like their judgment or their actions. Like they're kind of cold and rational and do what they have to do. They follow their dharma or whatever bullshit. And so yeah, there's a character in that film played by Gregory Peck who's like he's just like kind of a ruthless general, but Steve Bannon seems to think that well, he's not like unfeeling, but he's following his duty. Like it's because he cares about the boys, the troops, that he is like kind of, tough on them. And by tough on them, they show a clip from the film, and Gregory Peck is just like, I mean, to summarize it, he's just saying to these guys, he's giving them kind of like a rousing speech in a way, but it's also like, you're all being a bunch of pussies. You're all being afraid. You don't want to go out. This is like the Air Force. Is like, you're all afraid to like get up back in the air. But I don't go for any of this what are we fighting for bullshit. Like, you just need to do it because that's what we're supposed to do. It's like that kind of like circular reasoning that like idiots use. Like, America fights because America fights, and it's good. It's good because
you
it's
signed
good.
up to follow orders, so follow orders. We pay you to follow orders. You don't have to worry about morals because you're following orders. Or your life.
Yeah. it's good because it's good kind of thing. And Bannon's sitting there watching these clips, like getting almost like misty eyed, like, wow, this is so wonderful. But in any case, this sets up the whole idea of like Biden kind of fancying himself a similar kind of figure who like makes these hard decisions in order to win, and winning is good because winning is good, and so on. But then he also kind of like, he gives a glimpse into, you know, his ideology. And early in the movie, he says something to the effect of modernity is based around emotion. And to him, that's the problem. And I mean, that's like basically shorthand in a way for like, he doesn't like all this social justice shit, this like worrying about people's feelings and so on. Like, you just have to make these tough decisions. And what I find interesting about Bannon is that I think he's just kind of full of shit in general. I think a lot of this like army talk is just a lot of like cosplaying bullshit. And what really is motivating him is what motivates like most people, I guess, is like things like power and money, and that's the stuff he's after, really. It's just he seems to find it in different areas of life throughout his life.
Yeah.
So like, I mean to get like biographical, like you said, he went to all these like elite institutions, right? Like he went to Harvard, he went to Georgetown.
I mean, he was an officer in the military. That's more prestigious than being enlisted, like by a bit. He went to very good schools. He worked at Goldman Sachs, which is considered a big deal in the finance world.
Yeah, and then the contradiction with him though is that he's still, you hear him just railing against the elites. And he at least, you know, he's self-aware enough to note to point out that he'd been to all these elite institutions, and he, you know, so it was like, yes, he was an officer in the military. But before that, yeah, he went to like Harvard Business School or something. I'm getting I might not have all the details correct here exactly, but he did go to Harvard. He did go to Georgetown. I want to say he went to West Point, but maybe that was just his daughter.
His daughter definitely did.
Yeah. In any case, he's saying his point seems to be like, so I've been there. I've seen it all. I know these people. I know how they operate. And now I'm a populist. So it's like an important part of the Bannon like persona, at least since like the Trump times, at the very least, is he's always going on about populism. And like, you know, the average person, the working class person, the working man, as he calls them, like, which seems to go really against like anything he's actually doing, other than using the working class as a way to like, as a means to an end, you know, to get Donald Trump elected, for example. Also, like in terms of the elite institutions stuff, I mean, one of the things I remember hearing, like, again, like I never paid much attention to Bannon in specifics, like until watching this documentary, honestly.
Yeah, and watch his great film,
but
Generation Zero.
No. But one of the things I remember, like back in like when he was still working with Trump, like on an official capacity, was people pointing out that he was like one of the producers of Seinfeld.
He was one of the producers of Seinfeld. That was one of his first like really successful endeavors.
Yeah, so he really did have a sort of fully rounded, like, I've been in all the elite circles of America. Like he did.
I mean,
I guess you could call being a military officer being elite, but like,
I don't know how far he rose in the military, but military officers make decent money, man. And usually are connected after they leave the military. It's very different than being enlisted. Like, you know, you always hear about soldiers getting fucked over, but if you're an officer, you usually do pretty well after you get out.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was like a Harvard Business School graduate who went directly into the Navy. And I think part of that was because there was not a war on. So it's not like he was really risking anything. And like I say about cosplaying, it's just my gut feeling that, he picked the Navy and at a time when there's no real war happening.
That doesn't mean that he didn't want a war, Joshua. He might have wanted a war.
He might have, but I think in general, he strikes me as just another one of these like neocon cowards who loves to talk about the military. And I guess maybe to give him a little more credit than a lot of those people, like he did actually join the military, but again, he was an officer and there was no fucking war on. Like had it been while Vietnam was still going, I don't think he would have joined. I think it was just him living out these sort of militaristic fantasies that he gleaned from like movies and shit. That's just my...
I mean, it could have been also that, at least at that point, I think it's like less true now, but I think there used to be this like pipeline of military to politics, and maybe he always wanted to get involved in politics and knew one of the best ways to get involved in politics was to join the military and do his time there.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, he took his time before he really got into politics.
He wanted to get rich first.
Really, yeah, but like he didn't get like explicitly into politics until Trump.
Well, I would actually say he got into it when he met Andrew Breitbart, but that
I was thinking the same thing, but that's not really getting into politics. Really, he wasn't like a political strategist. Like he was just a guy who gave money to a fringy, fucked up website that was political in nature,
talking about politics. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it all sort of like leads towards that, I guess, in a way too. But one thing I found, like, so there's just a lot of contradictory stuff. I mean, at one point, Errol Morris in the documentary says that, he finds Bannon to be not a populist, but an like the exact opposite. Like this is anti-populist rhetoric, and says that there's like an inherent contradiction in like his entire worldview, which I agree with, because I think early on in the movie, Bannon is like, I mean, he basically sounds like, if you took him out of context enough too, he basically sounds like an anti-war, like leftist. Yeah, I mean, in certain moments.
Here's a direct quote from Bannon that I feel like you may have heard on your favorite leftist podcast. Baby boomers are the most spoiled, most self-centered, most narcissistic generation the country's ever produced. That's a good Bannon line, right? Where he blames the baby boomers for ruining all of America.
He is one of them.
Well, yeah, no, he lumps himself into it. But he's like, yeah, I know, we ruined it. I know a lot of leftists say the same thing.
For sure. He also says that like the Vietnam War was one giant terrible waste of human life. He doesn't use those exact words, and they kind of show him the documentaries portrays like the Vietnam War as having this kind of like some sort of deep effect on him when he was younger, even though he wasn't involved in it. But he saw like people coming home in, pine boxes and everything. But like Bannon criticizes the Vietnam War, but I feel like he's criticizing it for a lot of the wrong reasons. Like he talks about having this epiphany, this transformative moment or something, which to me, like when he gets to the punchline or whatever, it seems sort of like, what was your big epiphany? But he said his like daughter's volleyball team's uniforms, they got new uniforms, and he was like watching them practice, like watching his daughters practice at West Point. And he like looked over at the boxes of uniforms and saw "Made in Vietnam." And then he just repeats that like really, really emotionally. He's like, "Made in Vietnam," like shaking his head. I'm like, what's your point, man? I don't understand what this has to do with how the Vietnam War was fucked up.
I took it two ways. I mean, I think I knew what he wanted.
Yeah,
I think part of it is like, hell yeah, Vietnam makes our clothes now. That war really worked out for our benefit. Or he meant,
I don't think that's what he meant.
That's just my cynical way of taking it. My God, these people killed our boys. And we killed them. Why are they making our clothes? Why aren't we making our clothes?
Yeah, I think that's more on the right track, because he's one of his big things obviously is he's just a huge nationalist. He hates globalization.
Yeah, I think his ideal world would be a world where no one was traveling outside of their nation.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or only like the ultra wealthy. Like it's okay for him to go to Europe and like pull a stunt where he tells all of them to be populist and not leave their nations.
Exactly. He even says like somewhere that like I've traveled all around the world and blah blah blah. But yeah, and then just like a kind of a quick aside that's just it speaks to something more general that I notice a lot when sometimes when people talk about the Vietnam War is like the first thing we're like the first priority is to remember that 50,000 American soldiers died, which of course is a tragedy.
Oh, it's terrible.
But then people, if they even mention it at all, and I guess to Steve Bannon's credit, he does mention the fact that millions of people in Vietnam were killed. And I mean, I guess throughout Southeast Asia, if you count Cambodia and everything as well.
It could be argued. Actually, it's not really worth having an argument about it. The fire bombings of Vietnam were all as terrible as like the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb in Japan.
In terms of numbers, yeah. In terms of deaths, I mean, I think possibly worse. And the way that Bannon, in my opinion, very kind of casually rattles off those numbers, and maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit, but I remember he says something like 50,000 like U.S. soldiers dead, tearing families apart.
I don't think it's.
And then he goes. And then he, as a kind of a postscript, he's like, oh, and like 10, 20, 30 million people in Southeast Asia murdered too.
I feel like...
and he's not the first person to evoke that feeling in me of just like, these priorities seem backwards to me, especially considering that we were like completely the aggressors in that war, that utterly pointless war. I mean, I guess at least Bannon points out that it was pointless. And I think what maybe he was really getting at with the anecdote about like the clothes being made in Vietnam, maybe was that like, this is what it was all for, was like,
yeah,
having some cheap clothes made in another country.
That was my first example. Yay, we finally get to get clothes from Vietnam. Hooray.
Yeah, but he's not celebrating it.
Celebrating
He's saying like, he's not like, yay, we got cheap clothes. He's saying like, is that what all this death and shit was for? Was for like a t-shirt. But I don't know. He doesn't, it was kind of like, I felt it was kind of hard to read what his real point was on that in a way, but
I think it's possible that
anyway,
he doesn't have a real point.
It is possible. I mean, I'm still sticking with the idea that he's just he's building up towards his like, this is why globalism's bad. This is why isolationism is good.
Oh yeah.
And his problem doesn't seem to be so much that like millions of people suffered and died in Vietnam. It's just like, we could make our own volleyball uniforms in America and save some American lives. But yeah, he goes on like a lot more like sort of half-hearted elite bashing that's like always very generalized too. Like he never really specifies the institutions. He just says like elites or the establishment, as a way of trying to position himself as the populist. I think it's important to like point out like 2016 seemed like the year of the return of the word populism.
It really did.
I don't think it had been talked about in politics for like a long time.
It was
since maybe the like original actual populist movements of the like was it like late 1800s?
I think so. It's my understanding that both the Republican and Democratic Party actually tried to make populism into a bad word, and academic circles did too.
During the Trump
No. I
during
mean, before Trump,
2016?
like the reason you didn't hear it much is because for a long time the whole ideology of it was just like more like this is bad for society, so we don't want people talking about it.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, those are to sound like Steve Bannon for a minute, that's elite thinking as well, which is like, it's people who don't really like democracy, but won't like necessarily outright say it. But it's like this thinking of like, populism is bad because the average person is an idiot.
Yeah.
Like it should only be smart, highly educated,
it's the type of people,
elites that make these big difficult decisions and shape society.
It's the type of people who think that I mean, in their ideal worlds they would probably be in 100% support of things like eugenics, like through like making people take tests to have babies.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe
I mean, that is again another sort of thing that Bannon rails against, even though like it all rings very hypocritical and contradictory when you look at his other policies and other ideas about how the world should work. But I think I wrote it down, but he refers to like this kind of segment of people as the scientific engineering managerial elite.
Yeah.
I think, and one of those people would be Robert McNamara, who, the defense secretary during like the bulk of the Vietnam War.
Sure.
Did you ever see Fog of War, that documentary?
No, I didn't, but I think I've heard a couple of people say it was good. What's it about exactly?
It's about McNamara
not being able to see in the fog.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's the same filmmaker as this. It's Errol Morris. That's probably one of his more popular documentaries. I watched it years ago, like when it first came out. I remember buying it like for my dad as a Christmas present, and my like I must have been like brand new in college, where I was like, I just read Noam Chomsky for the first time. Like I am gonna try to like, I don't know, make my dad see the evils of war or something. Yeah. And he remembered and like, I think I sold him on it as like, oh, it's a documentary about the Vietnam War. And I actually just a few weeks ago started rewatching it. I didn't finish it because it was actually kind of pissing me off too much, because McNamara is made out to be like this kind of like flawed hero in that movie, and he's just a fucking, I mean, again, as we like to say on this podcast, this is for another episode, but McNamara was just a fucking bloodthirsty person, like, but then the documentary makes him out to be, it shows him in his like very old age, basically towards the end of his life, being like, I have some regrets about how I created the Vietnam War. And it just makes him tries to make him way too sympathetic. And the whole thing is like, it follows his like, I forget what number it was, but it was like Robert McNamara's 10 rules for warfare or some shit. And it was just like, it's not like he was really saying even that the war was a mistake. Like, it's just saying like, oh, the way I did it could have been better. And they do bring him up and that documentary up in this Steve Bannon interview, where as far as Steve Bannon even says to the director, your movie Fog of War is what inspired me to get into making political documentaries, which I found is kind of like a funny fuck you from Bannon to him in a way. He's like, oh, I'm the monster. You helped create me.
It's your very movies that made me want to do this.
Exactly. That's what he says to him. He's
I remember.
But I think he's also like, I think he's serious about that too, in a way.
Oh, I do too, man.
But they briefly talk about that movie and about McNamara, and like Errol Morris says, like, because I think like the way the movie ends is McNamara saying like rationalism won't save us, because McNamara's whole thing, to sum it up really quickly, was like, he's the brainy logic guy. He's the cold, hard, like logician who's going to make us win the war by using logic and math. And like, you know, obviously it was a failure. Like even if you weren't anti-Vietnam War, you would say that America lost the war quite likely because of the military approach of Robert McNamara, which Bannon sort of sums up in this movie as like applying military techniques that would have worked well in World War II to Vietnam, which I think he says something to the effect of like, if people are fighting for their like independence and freedom, you can't treat them the same way we treated like, you know, the Axis powers in World War II.
Sure.
But like, so yeah, rationality won't save us. And Errol Morris says something like, well, I thought that Fog of War was actually kind of a despairing movie. And Bannon says like, I found it inspirational. It's like a Greek tragedy. And Morris says, what? What's hopeful about a Greek tragedy? And I mean, Bannon's response is actually pretty correct. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I found Errol Morris to be asking dumb questions, and this was one of them. And Bannon's just like, well, you learn lessons from tragedies. He's like, that's what's hopeful about it. You can learn lessons. Anyway, that's a real minor point, but
I mean, that's not always hopeful. Some Greek tragedies, you just learn that you might accidentally have sex with your mom one day, and you never planned on it.
Well, depending on who you're talking to, it could be hopeful. But yeah, I take your point.
Though I mean, I used to love. Well, I guess I still love Twin Peaks, but I always loved how the original Twin Peaks ended with, spoiler alert, Agent Cooper like slamming his head into a window saying, "Where's Annie?" and being possessed by Bob. And it felt very Greek tragedy to me at the time. But I also watched it at a time when I was taking like 3 Shakespeare's classes in university, and also like some Greek literature courses, and had to talk about tragedies and comedies. So probably just wanted to make it out as a tragedy in my head. Anywho,
oh, that makes sense. I mean, Twin Peaks definitely is a tragedy, really, I would say.
I bet Steve Bannon does not like Twin Peaks, but also I would not be surprised to find out that he likes it.
I mean, he did make what he referred to as an avant-garde film for right-wingers, which was Generation Zero. Which,
I haven't seen it. I'm actually curious about it. I have the Wikipedia page pulled up for it, but it examines the subprime mortgage crisis and financial crisis of 2007 to 2008. And it talks about deficit spending because people love that. And the film focuses heavily on the 1960s and how the 1960s and the baby boomers ruined America. And I guess it explores it all through the Strauss and Hale generational theory. I'm sure it's terrible, but now I kind of want to watch it after watching the documentary just because I want to see like what happens in it. And listen to this wonderful cast starring John Bolton, Lou Dobbs, Newt Gingrich, Neil Howe, and Charles Krauthammer. I don't know who Charles Krauthammer is. I know who most of those people are, though.
I only recognize a couple names there.
You don't recognize John Bolton, Lou Dobbs, Newt?
Those are the three,
Neil
I guess.
Howe?
Don't know who that is.
Okay.
Sounds familiar. I just can't put a face to the name. Yeah, I mean, I was sort of interested in watching a second or two of it just because I want to see how avant-garde it really is, because that's how he described it. But yeah, I'm sure it's bullshit. Along with all of his other dumbass political movies that he made. I'm going to go out on a limb and say his movies are not good, at least message wise.
Yeah,
but,
especially the ones that like he had a hand in writing.
Well, he actually directed at least one or two of those, I think.
Directed and written by him.
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember they showed clips. They showed clips from his documentary, one of the documentaries, I forget which one. And all of it, his documentary was just movie clips of like a Ronald Reagan Western film that looked really dumb.
Yeah, I'm sure there are no whatchamacallit here, Adam Curtis documentaries.
Yeah, they're probably way better.
Obviously.
More avant-garde, more Reagan.
More Reagan.
More clips of Reagan and John Wayne, probably. Yeah, one other sentiment Bannon brings up is he says it twice throughout the movie that but the first way he phrased it I found really, really interesting, because it just sounds like textbook, like something you would never want to say if you were part of like a Breitbart type circle that he's in. But he said, I think I wrote it down specifically. He said, if you don't allow some way for the system to spread the wealth, there will be a revolution in America. The system to spread the wealth. I mean, I don't know any other word for that beyond some form of socialism. Although, I mean, I don't think you really hear Bannon specifically say he's against socialism. His obsession seems more to be about, like you said, like in his ideal world, everyone would just stay in their respective nations.
Stay in your place. Let your nation go about their thing. Maybe there's some trade in between nations, but it's definitely like not as it is now. Like America will produce all of its stuff, and maybe you get the exotic fruit from exotic fruit land, but you don't buy their like produced goods. You let nations manufacture their own goods.
America would have to start manufacturing its own cocaine.
But man,
for Bannon.
Whenever I hear like anti-globalist, I'm actually probably more of a globalist than I imagine you are, but it just makes no damn sense to me. Like, the world's completely connected now. There's no putting it back in the bag. Like, the faster people just accept that we're all like connected and we're all going to be trading with each other. So we have to like figure out a way, not just like nationally, which is what I think a lot of focus on, but globally, to make sure everyone's pulled up to like a living standard. The world's just going to continue to be fucked, in my opinion.
Why do you think I'm not that? I've said this on the podcast.
I don't know, actually.
I've said it to your face.
Well, I guess we're both in the
times.
Same place. I'm sorry. I take it back.
It's all right. I was just surprised to you.
For some reason, I'm not sure.
No, I mean, that's my whole... When I was rewatching this documentary, I was like, one of the main things I walked away from is just complete annoyance, to put it lightly, with Bannon's obsession with... His only clear sort of take on anything seems to be globalism bad, nationalism good. Yeah. Like everything else is like kind of murky and contradictory. But even his globalism good, nationalism bad, it is contradictory and doesn't make any sense, because you can't just like put the genie back in the bottle or whatever. You can't close Pandora's box, sure. whatever. Like, and also, why would you want to? What's wrong? Like, I don't see anything fundamentally wrong with establishing a global society, and any attempt to fight against that is just going to create more strife, like within countries and between countries, for sure. Because that's the thing, is he never really, at least in the documentary, and to be fair, like, this is a 90-minute documentary. I read a little bit about how the documentary was made. They shot like many, many hours of footage over this course of a few days or something. But Errol Morris never asks him, at least in anything we see, or shows him saying anything about like, well, how should the country then be managed? Like, what's your philosophy on that? Mm-hmm. And I think he's a nationalist, but it's like, well, what kind of nationalism? Because he doesn't.
I sometimes think he doesn't.
He doesn't even seem. He doesn't even seem to be like a
I get the sense that him and a lot of people like Bannon actually don't know what they want. They just have this like feeling for nostalgia. Exactly. Like what they want is like this movie America that maybe they never even lived in, but they believe existed at one time. Like this good feeling America where everyone was happy, everyone had a purpose, everyone went to their job, they went home and had their like wife cook dinner for them, their 2 kids going to school, American flag
Yeah,
flying in the front yard.
leave it to Beaver.
Yeah.
Yeah, American 50s.
There's this
idealist
fucking
shit.
mass delusion that existed. That never existed. Ever.
Yeah, I mean, it barely even existed on TV.
Yeah, I mean, it just never existed. It's a mass delusion, and that's what they want. But their methods of getting it make no damn sense, because it's not how the world works.
Yeah, no, and this comes down to something. I think, I mean, to me, like I don't know, maybe the central thing to talk about with Bannon in my mind, the thing that my mind kept coming back to is like, to what degree is he just an outright grifter, and to what degree does he really believe
in this?
Say anything, or believe in any of the sort of political programs he talks about? Because he does come across as fairly sincere about certain things, like bringing back manufacturing jobs, or at the very least, just like being isolationist, being a nationalist. And also, yeah, going back to a kind of culture that never existed of like when men were men and all this bullshit. But most of his career, I think, shows to me that he's mostly just a grifter, beyond everything else. Maybe he does really believe in white nationalism, or at least nationalism, like at the very least. But I mean, of course, he claims to not be racist at all. I mean, a lot of his
policies are a little racist.
Actions and things he's done, policies he's presented or whatever, say kind of speak otherwise. But maybe that's a good point to talk about another when he. So what point in his career was this? When he was kind of done with his Hollywood phase, and then he just got it back into the like venture capitalism.
Right. So
shit.
Around early 2000s, he had got out of his film producing phase. Though I guess he's going to go back to film producing right before Breitbart. Anyways, because Generation Zero is 2010. But this is after he is done working with Sean Penn. You know they work together, him and Sean Penn. Sean Penn hates him.
I didn't know that.
Sean Penn really dislikes Steve Bannon, but I think Sean Penn was somehow in a couple of the movies he produced. I mean, not necessarily by
Sean Penn is also full of shit.
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
P.S.
I don't know much about Sean Penn. I just know that they dislike each other. Tangents. There's this guy, Brock Pierce. You may know him from famous movies like The Mighty Ducks 1 and Mighty Ducks 2. He was not the star.
I know that's where I know him
We discussed it earlier that he was not the star. He was also co-starring with Sinbad in the movie First Child or something like that.
First Kid. Yeah.
First.
He was although he was in Child's Play 3 as
First Little Human.
First Little Big League, Child's Play. Those were the 3 movies that I mashed together that he was
Brock
in.
Pierce was a moderately successful child actor who retired at the sweet and young age of 16. I think he's around the same age as me, because around this time, he got into World of Warcraft, which he played $13 a month to have friends online. Can't beat it.
Was that the catchphrase?
No, I just made that one up.
$13. Ooh, we should get into marketing for World of Warcraft.
Maybe. I mean, it's still going strong 20 years later.
Should just send an email that just says, I got an idea for...
I bet it costs more than $13 a month now. It's probably full of microtransactions. So this is before microtransactions are really a thing, but playing World of Warcraft with your friends at that time... there's 2 parts to the game. Like, you play the game, you level up, you go fight monsters, you do like quests with your friends. But the other part is you have to like mine for gold and collect gold to be able to buy items for your character and craft stuff. The mining part is people call it grinding, but it takes a lot of time. And there's no quick way around it. So Brock, while playing, is like, why don't we just pay people to do the mining for us? And then, like, people with means can just, like, basically he just created jobs within the economy and paid for it with real money. Turns out a lot of people playing the game disliked the grinding part of the game, would be completely okay with paying money to just have someone else do that part of the game for them, right? And he started a company called IG, and they kind of exploded onto the scene, and Steve Bannon had picked it up or had got wind of it and was like, this seems like something good to invest in. And so he at the time was working for Goldman Sachs. He convinced people at Goldman Sachs to invest in it, and the company like exploded. And with this investment money, because World of Warcraft's like the most popular thing ever. Actually, when the company started, EverQuest was the most popular thing ever, but then World of Warcraft came out and it became like the most popular game of that time. And that gives them enough money to start opening like mining facilities in China and other parts of Southeast Asia, which is where things gets really bad because like basically the way you mine in World of Warcraft is you press the right click button of your mouse over and over again and like beat at a fictional mountain to mine gold, right? So they start paying like Chinese people 25 cents an hour and setting them in rooms with like, just say like a small room, like 25 feet by 25 feet. I don't know if that's a small room or not. I'm really bad with numbers. With like,
yeah, I mean they show a quick shot of those rooms in I think it was in Hong Kong specifically. In the documentary, it's just a bunch of guys in like a sweaty room with a big PC.
Yeah, they'd work for 12 to 16 hours a day. Average rate 25 cents an hour. But people back in the States on eBay and Craigslist, they're buying this gold for like basically fictional gold to real life money, $1. Like $1 US is worth one gold piece in World of Warcraft at this time, which is insane. Insane turns on investment from Brock Pierce. Brock Pierce made a ton of money with this company. So did Steve Bannon. And it was during this time that Steve Bannon's like investing in this company that he also gets in touch with like the gaming community. This is when he learns that like gamers have a lot of disposable income, really love gaming, and are fairly opinionated people that maybe he could control with his like message of populism if he could get to them somehow. Eventually IGE falls apart because like first off, it's against terms and services for most of these games for people to be selling the stuff from the game to other users of the game. And second, gaming companies like Blizzard and now like every gaming company ever realized, wait, people are willing to spend money on game assets? Why don't we just sell them? So now you get like most every mobile phone game ever, or basically any computer game where if you don't want to go through the work of doing it in the game, you just buy it from the game maker, which is fine. It's called microtransactions. So there's no need for a company like IGE anymore.
And then there, like, it all kind of fell to shit though, right?
Yeah. I mean, it all fell to shit because various reasons. There was a lot of money in it, but eventually it just came that the people literally making the games realized, oh, we can just make that money instead. So they start selling the stuff in game, which means there's no room for IG anymore.
I see.
So anyways, Steve Bannon did get acquainted with the gaming community while working in this because he never really played games. And it kind of led him to realize that it was an untapped audience. Like these internet gamers was just like something that I guess the people in power, like even when Bannon was at Goldman Sachs, they didn't want to invest in this internet company, but Bannon's like, I think you could make a lot of money. They're basically just making money off of fiction. And I think he just saw something in the gaming community, this like just devotion they had to each other, that he could manipulate and make a ton of money from, which leads into Breitbart. Like I think a lot of his like reason that he decided to help Andrew Breitbart start Breitbart was because of like gamers and thinking that he could connect with them. And didn't Breitbart basically start at the same time that Gamergate was going on, which is where gamers were basically mad that girls played video games and sometimes the girls were actually good at them?
I believe so, at least roughly. I don't even remember what year Gamergate really was. Can't remember.
Breitbart started to get famous because of Gamergate, because Steve Bannon hired Andrew Yiannopoulos, or however the fuck you say his last name. Andrew Miles Yiannopoulos? Fucking Milo. Sorry. Milo.
Andrew Breitbart and Milo.
Yeah, so Bannon hires Milo Yiannopoulos to report on Gamergate for Breitbart, and that's part of how he started to draw like gamers to Breitbart. Like, I want to say male, opinionated, I hate women style gamers into Breitbart.
Yeah, and also like apolitical, I guess, people as well. At least some of them, or like people that could easily be spun in one direction or another, depending on what influence kind of got to them.
Yeah, I mean,
first.
well, the gate for gaming was only nerds are allowed to enjoy gaming, Joshua. Like, you can't like gaming because you're in a rock band and you've probably had sex before. Or if you're a girl, you can't.
You give me so much credit.
If you're a girl, you can't like gaming because you're a
once.
girl. Full stop.
I knew the gender angle.
It's
about
a gender
it.
and a like sort of like, I want to say, jock nerd division thing,
which seems to be like entwined with like in almost like the incel underworld or whatever. So there's like, what is it? The Chads are the devil type stance.
I'm so happy I'm a Chad.
Me too. Man, there was a very short period where I was sort of like, I was following some group on like Facebook, and it was like people that just like reported on like the most outrageous shit that would go on in like the incel underworld, just because I had no idea about any of it. I found it kind of amusing, but it was also like so depressing. That's why it was very short-lived fascination of mine, because I just couldn't stand looking at it anymore. But I was like, holy shit, this is like an elaborate subculture with like their whole, like a whole fucking like ethos and language and shit. And it was really sad and gross to look at.
There's a great podcast episode from Reply All documenting like the found or how the incel movement started on the internet. It almost makes me feel bad. It's like one of those I want to say Pepe the Frog sort of situations where the creator of it actually might have had like some decent intentions, and then it just got turned into like this weird like malformed like bad thing by like sharing it. It like took on a life of itself, if that makes sense. Because originally the incel thing was literally just started as like a message forum to like for people that had never had sex to like, and like were older, to
like a support group. Yeah, I guess it's also kind of easy in retrospect to see how something like that could like spiral into like a really hateful, nihilistic kind of subculture as well. So all of this is kind of leading towards Steve Bannon's like eventually becoming the Steve Bannon I would guess most of the world knows him as, which is Trump's brain or whatever. Like, a lot of people wanted to draw parallels between now I can't think of his name, Turd Blossom, the guy who was behind Karl Rove. Karl Rove and Bush, you know, they called Karl Rove like Bush's brain or whatever, because he just basically like told him what to do. And a lot of people were seeing the same kind of relationship between Bannon and Trump. But I think Trump was way more like too stubborn and full of himself to really, I'm sure he did listen to a lot of things Steve Bannon had to say, but I don't think it was quite the same relationship, because, I mean, obviously, spoiler alert, Trump fires Bannon in, I think, like 2017, like not soon after they took the White House. And that all came about, I guess, primarily, maybe solely because of, it was like they needed to like serve up like a sacrificial lamb to like placate some of the populace about the Charlottesville nightmare.
That was my understanding too.
And it was because Steve Bannon was basically like he wasn't like outright saying like, yes, the neo-Nazi movement is going to win and I'm all for that. But he basically said the same thing Trump did, which is like, there's good people on both sides or whatever. And although in the documentary, when he talks about it, he the only time he really talks directly about like the alt-right movement, or I guess he's saying more specific, he's specifically saying neo-Nazi movement, not necessarily alt-right, because I think he still embraces the term alt-right as far as I can see. But he says something to the effect of like, the neo-Nazis are like, I don't even think about them. Like they're not, they're not part of my grand like political
plan, agenda,
scheming, and they're not going to be part of my populist revolution. Like they're sideshow circus freaks, and the media overemphasizes how important they really are within the grand scheme of things. And I hate to agree with Steve Bannon on anything, but I sort of agree with that last part a little bit about like a lot of the fear mongering about like Trump is going to be the next Hitler shit. I think that's been kind of proven now to be not the case,
because he's not president anymore. He didn't just like,
well, he's not president, and everyone's saying he's not gonna. Of course, I knew, like most people knew, he wasn't going to accept his loss, like necessarily. Wasn't going to accept it gracefully.
It would have been against his brand,
which he didn't. Yeah, but
and he cares about brand.
I think completely, and I think that's mostly what was motivating Trump's decision making throughout his presidency. Honestly, was like, what's going to help me preserve my brand?
Sure,
whether I win or lose in the next election.
I'm sure,
and
to everyone's dismay, he's came out richer now than he was before.
Well, and also he's not, I mean, he is kind of a pariah, but like he could at least, at the very least, like keep making like money off of just like giving a speech like once a year at CPAC or whatever. He's going to be just fine money-wise for the rest of his life. And just our luck, I mean, he's probably going to live to be like 150.
After Charlottesville, that's when Bannon's cut loose, and the documentary does like this great, like, I guess, cutaway to that Shakespeare movie. What was the Shakespeare movie they were showing?
Chimes at Midnight.
At Midnight. And it shows...
it's a Orson Welles movie.
Have you seen it? I've never seen it. I feel like...
Yeah, I saw it kind of recently because I decided I wanted to watch
Orson Welles movie.
A bunch of Orson Welles movies that I hadn't ever seen before.
I mean, the main Orson Welles movie I've watched over and over again is The Third Man. Love
Great
that movie. But it's basically frames... In this scene in the documentary, Bannon gets framed as Falstaff, who's like the advisor in Chimes at Midnight, right? And the king banishes him after he becomes the king, because at this moment he realizes, I don't know what, he's transcended the advice of Falstaff. He no longer needs Falstaff. Is that what it's getting at?
Right.
Not a betrayal. It's the natural order of things.
Yeah. I mean, that part was very like...
on the nose.
On the nose, and I think it's just Bannon being full of shit. I mean, the other thing to mention about the documentary is that documentary came out around the same time that there was that memoir. I forget who wrote it now, and I'm not going to look it up, but it was some memoir about someone who worked within the Trump administration, and it was very like tell all. Like it had things like Bannon like saying like nasty shit about Trump and about all sorts of other people. Like I think one of the famous things that got out was like Bannon saying like so and so like loves sucking their own dick so much. There's like I don't know. But yeah, so like I don't think Bannon really has that affection towards Trump that he tries to put off in this documentary. I think this is another one of his just like bullshit sort of manipulations of like, well, I should like still try to stay on his good side or whatever. But I mean, to him, Trump was a means to an end. And yeah, I mean, like Trump did things during the short time while they were both like triumphantly, in office together. Like, for example, when the whole the Steele, so when like the Russiagate shit really kicked off with the Steele dossier, and then Trump very idiotically fired the head of the FBI who was investigating the whole thing at the time. Bannon makes a point of saying that like right before the firing happened, like the media had basically like stopped caring about the Steele dossier, and like the Russia connection stuff was kind of like dying down in the media. And Bannon, I guess, told Trump like not to fire Comey, like let him stay on. But Trump, being like the kind of petulant child that he is, like fired him anyway, which just brought on like full force, like the Russia obsessed narrative for the next 2 years.
Thank God for that, because we wouldn't have got that fucking awesome Netflix movie had that not happened.
Or 3 years, I should say. Oh yeah, the Comey rule. Yeah, that was it doesn't matter. It was I think it was HBO specials whatever movie, but God, that movie sucked. I apologize for making us watch that. I thought it was going to be way more fun to like laugh at and talk about in the podcast than it was. We got to talk about the Bannon's. I will say this is actually sort of a brilliant political advisor type move. The way that they dealt with, let's just call it Pussygate or whatever, the Billy Bush leak. Everyone knows what I'm saying. And instead of like, basically Bannon summarized it as like, they all gathered together. Like, what are we going to do about this tape that's come out? And this was, so this was before the election.
Yeah,
though,
this
right?
was before the election, because people thought it was going to sink the election. I thought.
Right.
I thought it was going to sink the election.
I must have
you
thought
had to
that.
think
but like,
that. There's no way you didn't think that.
I guess I did, but I don't know. I honestly, maybe I was so checked out of the whole news cycles by that point because I was so pissed off about the way Bernie was railroaded that I probably just didn't give a shit. Honestly, I'm not trying to say like, oh, I saw what was going to happen. It wasn't that. It was just like, I don't really have a visceral memory of like, oh, Trump's dead now. Because like, I just assumed Trump was going to lose the whole time anyway.
I did too.
To Clinton, as everybody did. But like, anyway, so the reaction though was, so I guess like Chris Christie and whoever else, some other like typical 2D politician, like gave the typical politician's like solution of what Trump should do. Like, you should go on like 2020 or Dateline or whatever, have your daughter sitting on one side of you and your wife sitting on the other, and like make like a really heartfelt, apology. And Bannon was basically like, fuck that. We're going to just like fight back even harder or something to that effect. And like, just basically not even acknowledge that it happened. I mean, I think Trump did put out some sort of quick filmed apology of sorts.
It's called the hostage video, by the way. But
why is it called that? I didn't really even get that.
The people who watched it, the internet people who watched it, is like, they're forcing him to do this. Trump's being held hostage. And his apology basically boils down to like, I was younger then. People say shit when they're young.
Right. It was like a non-apology kind of thing. Then so instead of going on TV and doing like a weepy like apology, like a real true, not true, but you know what I mean, like a very sincere seeming apology, Bannon's like, no, hold a big rally, have people chant, build the wall, just like rile people up even more. And then the real kicker though was the debate with Clinton
and bringing the women who had accused Bill of, rape and other such things.
Yeah, and it was also, it was in retaliation to the fact that the Clintons had basically played the same kind of game of intimidation with, I guess they had Mark Cuban, man, I just like that guy. I don't know why exactly.
You just like Mark Cuban?
It just seems like,
I don't like him either.
Maybe just because he's a billionaire and I'm a fucking
rube.
I'm a knee-jerk communist, so I hate him. No, just something about his personality rubs me the wrong way. The little bit I've seen of him on video. But anyway, the Clintons brought Mark Cuban into the debates and had him sit in the VIP section to like basically try to throw Trump off his debate game. It's not like Trump has a debate game anyway. Like, you're not really going to phase a guy like that who's totally unself-aware. But in any case, they brought Mark Cuban in to like try to distract Trump, to like basically stare at him from the audience. And in Bannon's mind, he was like, well, we have like, you know, tit for tat, whatever. Like, we can do our own version of that. Which, yeah, like you said, they gathered like, I think it was 4 women, and, you know, that's not all of them. There are many more that have accused Bill Clinton essentially, if not outright rape, but other sort of like sexual impropriety or assault or harassment. And, but not only that, but like, you know, a lot of people will tell you that it's pretty clear also that Hillary Clinton intimidated these women and enabled Bill Clinton to keep doing what he was doing and knew about a lot of it. But yeah, so like there was this whole thing of like they kind of tricked the press into like walking into the room where Trump was. They wanted to interview Trump about the tape, you know, and instead they walk into the room and it's Trump flanked on both sides by these Clinton accusers. And Trump didn't even seem to say a word, at least in the video clip I saw. But they're like, Trump, why would you touch a woman without consent? Why would you touch a woman without consent? Referring to the tape. And at least one of the women just started screaming back at the press, like, why don't you ask Bill Clinton about rape or something like that? And yeah, I mean, Bannon's like very like happily recounting this. I mean, I will say it's kind of
it's a good tactic.
Kind of a smart move. I mean, what the fuck? It worked. Like nothing really ever stuck to Trump after that. Like not in a way that mattered. Like think of all the other fucking like controversies and shit that came out before and after that while he was president. Like none of it lasted like more than like a week or two, like tops in the news cycle. Like the Stormy Daniels thing, like that would have gotten any other president like to resign
because they would have apologized. Trump just like refuses to admit wrong. And Americans,
yeah, I guess maybe
Americans
that's it.
Fucking love that. Americans don't like people who apologize. Contrary to popular belief, they hate people that apologize. Apologizing is weak. We don't want weak leaders.
Yeah. I mean, I think Trump supporters are just so narrowly focused on whatever their issue is that they'll contort in any direction to like forgive or overlook or whatever, like, or rationalize away something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
But I say that, but then at the same time, I just remembered what we started talking about today, which was the fucking Biden building the wall, and his supporters are doing the same kind of fucking mental gymnastics right now.
Both sides. They're this.
Yeah, definitely.
They're both a fucking penny. One's the head, one's the tail. Doesn't matter.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch more stuff in the documentary, and there's a lot of other shit we could say about Bannon, but like, I guess we should kind of try to wrap it up here. The final thoughts on Bannon, maybe.
My final thoughts on Bannon, and I don't want to get into it much, but there's a point where Morris asked him if Bernie would have won had Steve Bannon ran the campaign, and I want to say yes. Maybe not like Steve Bannon particularly, but had Bernie been willing to, back for lack of better words, fight dirty, maybe it would be different now. But then I know we've talked about this some, maybe on the podcast and off, but then it wouldn't be Bernie. One of the things I like about Bernie is the integrity thing, but I think one of the things that's annoyed you before is that very thing, to where he's not willing to like throw people under the bus.
I guess. I mean, it's not so much that he has integrity, because I mean, I honestly think that some of the inaction on Bernie's part shows a lack of integrity, to be honest, in terms of like loyalty to his stated goals, his ideals. But that's for another day to really dive into. But yeah, I thought that part was kind of funny too, because it also was just Steve Bannon showing kind of perfect like tightrope walking, because he's when Errol Morris asked him the question, like, if you had run Bernie's campaign, would he have won? He doesn't just say yes. He says, well, he would have definitely made it to the general election against Trump, because he doesn't want to say, oh, I could have made him beat Trump. But he also isn't going to say, but he also wants to still brag about himself and be like, well, I would have definitely helped him kick Hillary's ass.
That's true.
And I don't know if that would have worked, honestly. I don't know how dirty. I mean, the thing is Hillary was so pre-coronated by so many people that it didn't really matter what, like, a lot of shit.
It didn't matter.
A lot, like a lot of this bad shit came out while Bernie was still running, and it just was easily shoved aside as like, whatever, you're not going to get in the way of our queen taking the throne.
That's true.
And so I don't know. I mean, it would have been more. It would have been.
No, one thing that amazes me. Sorry, I just want to just have this thought. I'm always surprised that Bernie didn't get the same rap as Nader. Like, I'm surprised more people don't blame Bernie for. I think they tried to blame.
A lot of people do.
No, I was going to say, I think a lot of people really do want to like just paint him the same way as Nader. I think both of those guys have had character assassination to some degree. I think Nader has more integrity than Bernie, but that's a whole other thing.
Well, he does, because he doesn't shill for the Democratic Party, and he never did and never will. But yeah, I mean, Steve Bannon, I think, like in the trial of populist versus just a grifter who will say and do just about anything, Bannon definitely falls on the side of will say and do anything for a buck for the most part. And I just want to point out that this, in general, the use of the word populist, like, really had so many problems. And you brought this up a little earlier, but like the original meaning of the term, and I know terms can change, whatever, but like it was based on a political party, like a third party in, the late 19th century, that was just clearly a leftist party, a workers' party. It was called the People's Party. Yeah. And the way that people during the 2016 and to this day still like people that talk about populism negatively, this is where like the people try to connect Bernie Sanders and Trump together.
I see.
They're both populists. One is right-wing populist, one's left-wing populist. It's like, well, first of all, I don't think you know what the word means if you're going to say Trump is a populist. I mean, I get what they're saying. They're just saying like Trump is trying to like appeal to like the common man, but like every political campaign tries to do that to some extent. I mean, look at every time Hillary Clinton ran and like would change her accent depending on what region of the country she was in, or like all the fucking racist dog whistling shit she did when she was running against Obama in 2008. And that's what's so hilarious to me, to see her in 2016. Like, she became, her side of things was the ID politics, like let's weaponize identity politics. And then Trump was like, let's weaponize populism. And I don't know, the whole thing's gross. Steve Bannon sucks. And Steve Bannon, one more thing that puts the nail in the coffin of him being just a grifter is, do you know about the big scam with building the wall, like the crowdsourcing he did and just stole like all the money?
A little bit, but I didn't follow it too much.
I mean, I don't know tons of the details, but I mean, I think it basically breaks down to
ask for donations.
Him and another couple of people made basically a phony like Kickstarter type campaign and just took basically all the money. And yeah, Bannon was arrested on his yacht, his like extremely expensive yacht, for this crime. I haven't seen how it's played out. I mean, of course he's probably not going to see like a moment in jail because he's rich, but yeah, maybe we should do real quick recommendations and get out of here.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm just gonna do something quick because I know you got to get going real soon. I will recommend... I'll recommend some Orson Welles movies.
Okay.
Including Chimes of Midnight and what's it called? F is for Fake. That's a fun, weird movie. Kind of a sort of a mockumentary, a little bit ahead of its time. Is it a mockumentary or a what would you call it? Anyway, it's a very, very sort of meta fictional film. And The Third Man, like you were talking about, because that's a great movie. So yeah, I'll recommend those 3 Orson Welles movies.
My recommendation is just going to endorse your recommendation of The Third Man, since I brought it up earlier.
Joint recommendations. This is a heat death first. Cool.
Okay, I'm going to jump off here, man. I gotta go, actually.
All right. Have a good one. See you later. Oh, and also, you should visit our website at heatdeathpod.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at heatdeathpod. And feel free to write us about anything. And till next time, bye-bye.
The first voice recording was made in 1860. It was a 10-second fragment of the French folk song Au clair de la lune recorded by inventor Edward Léon Scott de Martinville. But who will make the final voice recording and when? What will it be? Who will hear it?